Okay, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. We are continuing with this week's Parsha, which is on page 672 in the Hebrew, 673 in the English, in the article Chamas, which is Parshas Emor, right? That literally means, Emor means to say, right? That's what Emor means, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But I just want to say that I know so far for the last 2 weeks since Pesach, right, except for the week that I wasn't here, so the last 2 weeks, I keep on saying the Mitzvah will talk about Sfiras Omer if we have time, right? And I keep on saying that. But this week we're going to talk about Sfiras Omer, for sure. You know why? Sfiras Omer is in this week's Parsha. So actually it works out well. All right, we kept on pushing, kept on not having time, so it's all going to work out now. All right, so we're going to talk about Sfiras Omer, God willing, because it's also in this week's Parsha, so we'll tie the two things together. But before we get there, that's later on in the Parsha. So the first part of the Parsha, literally from the beginning until almost halfway through, till page 682, 682, right? It speaks about either the Kohanim, or it speaks about some of the sacrifices, a nadava. Really, it's sort of very much right in the parsha of the Kohanim. The beginning of the parsha speaks about who a Kohen is allowed to become impure to. As we know, a Kohen can go into a cemetery, right? A Kohen is not allowed to become impure to any individual except for the 7 close relatives. And we touched upon this just a little bit last week when we spoke about the 7 prohibited relationships that one is not allowed to have, right? Regarding in a relationship sense, mother, father, sister, brother, whatever it is. So it coincides also with the 7 relatives that he's allowed to become impure to: his parents, his siblings, his children, God forbid. Right, and it speaks about some of those. It goes into who he's allowed to become impure to, but except for the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to at all become impure, right? Except for a Meis Mitzvah, which is if you find a dead person on the road and there's no one to bury him, and the Talmud goes and learns that out, that he's allowed to do that. That's a different discussion. So that's one thing it speaks about. It also speaks about their haircut, right? It goes into their haircut, where they're allowed to, what they're not allowed to. It also speaks about a few other things about a Kohen. And as I mentioned, also speaks about goes into the next page goes into specific things about the Kohen Gadol, certain unique things about him. And then it speaks about some of the mums, all right, some blemishes that a Kohen might have that will make him not worthy, let me rephrase that, not worthy, but makes him that he cannot serve in the temple. It goes through some of those blemishes. Believe it or not, one of the blemishes is if your eyebrows connect, right? And as we know, a man's not allowed to shave his eyebrows. He's not allowed to he's not allowed to do that, right? So therefore, that's actually, why is that considered? I'm not going into that. That's just throwing out that's one of the things. Why, if a Kohen has one of these, it's not anything. So it's just again, not going into that. That's not today's discussion. I'm just throwing out the information. It has to be learned. Look at the commentaries. Hopefully another time we'll have time to speak about that. But that's another part. So it really goes into different laws regarding the Kohen, right? And then if a Kohen becomes impure, chapter 22, page 676, what happens when a Kohen becomes impure? It's different than a regular or a daughter of a Kohen, right? What's the status of a daughter of a Kohen if she gets married, right, to a non-Kohen, and then what happens if she gets divorced, if she becomes a widowed, right? What's her status regarding eating the truma or other things that a Kohanim have the laws regarding the Kohanim. So as I said, it really goes into a lot of the laws of Kohanim, right? Really up until 678 in the middle, right? So I just want to talk a little bit about what is significant about the Kohanim. What is this, and why does Judaism have sort of let's just call it a hierarchy, right? Regarding religious spirituality, we could call it, or a hierarchy in regarding different laws or different expectations, right, from which manifests into different laws from different people than there is from us. We're all equal, all the children of Hashem, right? We all are children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, right? So who cares if I was born from a descendant of Aaron or if I was born from a descendant of Yehuda, right? Like, who cares? What's this hierarchy? What are we supposed to learn from it? And what's the idea behind it? So the commentary is explaining, again, this is a big topic. We're just sort of skimming the surface, sort of just to get an understanding on it. And the commentaries explain that the structure, it's important to realize that no, not everybody's the same. It's important to know we're not all the same. We're not. Let's just be honest, right? Some people have beautiful voices and they could be a chazan and they could lead the services, and other people, please don't, right? Please don't, right? But it's just God makes us different. That's just the reality, right? The reality is some people are able to run really fast, right, and other people can't, and then some people make a living out of that, right? Some people have a higher IQ than other people. They are literally just smarter. That's the fact, right? That's the fact. They are smarter than other people. So some people are born with money and they can give more tzedakah. They could theoretically, if they want, to give more tzedakah, or they make more money. Their business takes off, right? They invested in the stock market. They bought Zoom stocks right before COVID, and then they stole it right, the middle of COVID, and they made tons of money, right? Zoom stocks were like a few dollars, and then it went up to like $400 or $500 a stock in no time. Right, so all of a sudden they became wealthy, and they were smart, right? So they're going to take, the credit for themselves. What are they going to do with that? So now they could give more charity. They could do so. I don't have the opportunity to do that. Someone else doesn't have the opportunity to do it. We're not all the same. It's important to remember this idea that everybody's equal and everybody's this and everybody's that. That's a farce. It's a farce. It's not true. What is true is one thing that we all do have the ability to do is we all have the ability to grow and get closer to Hashem with what Hashem gives us. That is the way we present it, and that's the truth. Whatever talents Hashem gives us, whatever class Hashem puts us in, whatever, if it's a Kohen or if it's a Yisrael, or if it's a Levi, right? If you're born to a family of rabbis, or you're born to non-religious, right? Or you're born to wealth, or you're born to poverty, you're born with singing ability, you're born with ability to speak, right? Some people have that strength, other people don't, right? They just don't have it. They could get up there and they can't speak, right? Some people just don't have it. It's not anything negative about that person, or it's not anything positive about the person. It's important to realize that we're not all the same, but what your talents are or the gifts that Hashem gave you do not make you someone better. What it does is it gives you greater responsibility. Why did Hashem choose you to have that responsibility? I don't know. Right? But with greater responsibility comes greater gifts, comes greater responsibility. Right? With greater strength or greater gifts comes greater responsibility. With greater responsibility, right, comes also, if you don't utilize those responsibility, greater consequences. Right? So, and to a certain degree, right, if you have that ability, you have those strengths, the Kohen is judged differently, right? Because Hashem gave him, for whatever reason, that neshama, that soul, right, Hashem said should be part of Aaron's clan and should have this ability to be able to grow and to serve in the temple and to be a leader of the Jewish people, the Kohanim were, and to be a spiritual advisor, so to say, in the communities that they live in, right? And to be like that. And with that responsibility, right, there's also greater consequences if they don't live up to it, where a regular person or Yisrael, whatever, doesn't get judged on the same way that they do. So again, it doesn't make one better than the other. But as I said, what we all are equal in is that we all are equal in trying to take ourselves to the next step of the next step with our relationship with Hashem. That we are all equal in. We're not equal in our strength, and we're not equal in our responsibilities, and we're not equal in our wealth, and we're not equal in our voices, and we're not equal in our even maybe where we could reach to the level of our spiritual. Maybe some people, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to reach a higher level. His neshama was a greater neshama. That is reality. But what we all are equal in, we are all equal in the ability to achieve our responsibility, our goal, what Hashem wants from us. That we're all equal in. Right? The Torah says, right? The Rambam, the Maimonides says that everybody could be like Moshe Rabbeinu, and then he said, but no one could be like Moshe Rabbeinu. Sounds like it's a contradiction. Hello, Maimonides, what are you doing? Right? And we know that Maimonides, every word, he was very careful with how he worded everything. The commentator, well, what's Maimonides talking about? How could everybody be like Moshe Rabbeinu and no one can be like Moshe Rabbeinu? So it says the commentaries, right, that what Maimonides means to say like this, that no one can be like Moshe Rabbeinu, no one can reach the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. As the Torah says, Anu Mikol Adam, he was the most humble man of all time. Peh al peh, he spoke to God word to word. He went up to heaven. He didn't eat for 40 days, 40 nights, almost like an angel. There's no one that could be like that. And God doesn't want anybody else to be like that. But we could all be like Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu achieved his purpose in this world. What Hashem wanted from him, that's what he achieved. So we could all be like Moshe Rabbeinu, we could all achieve the purpose that we are supposed to achieve. That is within our grasp. That is, we're all equal on that. That's where we're all equal. And this, when we think about this, right, our whole viewpoint on so many different things completely changed. Why do men have certain obligations and ladies don't? Why do ladies have to do certain things and men don't? Why Kohanim have certain responsibilities and Israelis don't, and Levi and this and that, right? Even in religion, right? Why mitzvah we could do only if you live in Israel, you can't do it in America. In America, you could do it. There's certain things that we spoke about this idea once because it creates achdus and unity, right? That was another idea that's part of that idea, right? Because we're all really one body, one person, and only collectively can we do all the Torah and all the mitzvahs, right? And that's the idea in Mount Sinai. We spoke about that another time, right? And maybe we'll expand on that Shavuos night. Boris, a plug for you, right? Shavuos night, God willing, maybe we'll expand on that, right? But what we're saying now is that another idea of this, why is it that there's no one, that all the mitzvahs, some people can do this, some people do this, some people have that responsibility, this responsibility, we're physically different also, right? Is because Hashem is trying to tell us that what talents you have, what responsibility you have doesn't make you better than the other person. It's if you accomplish what you're supposed to do and recognize that this is what you're supposed to do. If someone tries to do something that is not their responsibility, even though they might do it greatly, you come up to Shemayim and Hashem says, if I say, I'm going to serve in the Beis Hamikdash, and I'm going to bring a sacrifice, and I make an altar in my backyard, right, and I have a group of people, we slaughter it, and I go, oh, I'm bringing a carbon. First of all, I'll probably get arrested, right? I don't know if my bylaws of our housing will allow us in the city, but that's a different point, right? But I come up to Shema and say, look, Hashem, I brought a carbon. Or even if it was in, let's say, the Beis Hamikdash, right? I say, oh. On the contrary, I'm Chaim Misa. It's a punishment of that. I'm not allowed to bring a carbon. I'm not allowed to, of course, I'm allowed to bring a carbon. I'm not allowed to do the avoda, the service of a carbon, right? In a Beis Hamikdash. That's not my job. But I want to become more spiritual. That's what I want to do. No, that's not what I want you to do. That's not what I want you to do. So it doesn't make a difference between a Kohen, an Yisrael, and a Levi. It doesn't make a difference between a man and a woman. It doesn't make a difference between a Jew and a non-Jew, and even a non-Jew. Yes, a non-Jew has an opportunity to convert, right? But they don't have to. They have the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. That's where we discourage them from converting. And they have the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. They have an opportunity of also getting closer to Hashem. That's their responsibility. Right? This is a core value, and that's part of the idea. Again, we're just scratching the surface, but one of the ideas Hashem created this is also to remind us there's also a deeper thing. Aaron, right? Aaron achieved a greater greatness, right? The tribe of Levi didn't do the golden calf. There's a lot deeper ideas also. Why were they chosen, right? Why were they chosen and not the tribe of Zvulun or whatever it is? We do have part of the strength of our forefathers, right? I don't want to get into that idea, but the point I want to bring out is that the whole concept of having this is to remind us, right, that we all have different jobs. We all have different jobs. Doesn't make one better than the other. That's a mistake. It doesn't make one better than the other. Right? It does not make one better than the other. We all have to respond. You could have someone that's, learning all whatever it is, but if he's not really accomplishing what his purpose, he's not taking all his talents, right? So then, someone else that's doing maybe less, but had less opportunity or less knowledge or whatever it is, could be on a greater level, right? Because what Hashem wants us from us is to try to accomplish what our strengths are. And that's the same thing with our resources. So, oh, look, I gave $1 million to tzedakah, shkayach. You're worth $1.2 billion. So like $1 million for you is, like the same thing as someone giving $1,000 or even less. Right? So, shkayach, right? Thank you very much. So, but we make a big deal out of it. Oh, look, he gave $1 million to tzedakah. Again, I'm not, God forbid, taking away from that. Right? Of course, that's great. But if you weren't worth $1.1 billion, right? So then $1 million for you is no different than someone giving $100 or someone else giving $1,000, right? So it's all in perspective, and that's part of it. It's also, we have to look at it in perspective. What is your responsibility based off the resources that you have and the talents that you have? So that's this sort of this concept that I think is so crucial and important for us to just keep on reminding ourselves. We get so caught up, especially nowadays, where the society around us is so much is not the right way of saying it, I apologize. Right? The society in our days preaches and it sort of makes it as a focal point of its culture. Equality, everybody's the same, and everybody should have all the everything's. It's not. It's not. Of course, it's everybody should have the greatest opportunity that they can, but it's different. A man is a man, a woman is a woman. We all have different talents, we have different strengths, we have different responsibilities, right? A Kohen is a Kohen, and the Israel is Israel, and the Levi is a Levi, right? We all have someone that's there's people that are born with more wealth, people are born with less wealth, people are born with different talents, right? There's different people have different things, and everybody's not the same. We're not a cookie jar, right? We're not a cookie jar society. We're not just a cookie jar. Everything's the same, right? We're not robots. We all have different things. We all have different strengths, and that's how we make a society grow. That's how we make our relationship with Hashem. And it's so important to re-emphasize this every time. And we could, Kain Levi Yisrael, okay, we can understand, right? But when it becomes personal to yourself, really? Yes, we all have different obligations and different things. And we have to remember that. And again, this is not only regarding gender, it's also regarding talents that you have. It's also regarding resources that you have. And the greater resources, the greater strength that one has, greater responsibility, and there's also greater consequences, and you have to remember that, right? And that's something that is extremely important to try to really remind ourselves and to educate people that we are surrounding, our kids, our grandkids, our nephews, our nieces, our community, that this is a important thing, that when we come to recognize that all Hashem wants from us is for us to be the best that we can be, and not look at someone else and say, well, I have to be like them, right? Or why do they have that, right? You can say, wow, look, they're growing and becoming the best that they can be, so I can become the best we can be. Right? Not to say, well, if I had that, then I could be better. If I was born then, or I've been born that, or if I had those resources, or if I had this, or I had that, right? Or if I was, or I have to change myself to be like that. No. Everything that you have that what you have the needs to be able to grow and become closer to Hashem, and to get closer to the Torah, and to change your ways to become closer to Hashem. Right? That is, I think, an important lesson that we could take out of this idea. It's not directly talking about the words of this week's parsha, but I think just taking out from the concept, I think, is important. Any questions or comments? Okay, so let's move on. We're going to skip a little bit. Page 682. So 682, chapter 23, is a famous part of the Torah. We read it a few times, right, for our Gabayim here. Right, our Gabayim here should know. Right, this is the Moadim. This speaks about the holidays. All right, so we usually read it on Pesach and Sukkot, right? Sometimes Shavuos. I think Shavuos also. I have to look it up. I think we read on Shavuos also, right? But it's the Moedim, it's the holiday. So it starts off that Hashem speaks to Moshe, chapter 23, verse 1 and 2. Speak to the Jewish people and tell them, Moedeh Hashem, Asher Tikra Sam Mikra Kodesh Ele Hemoda. Right? Moedeh Hashem, these are the holidays. These are the holidays. You should tell them these are holidays. Asher Tikra Sam, that you shall call, right? That you designate. And that's the article translates tikru. They're saying designate, right? Tikru is really to call, right? To kriya, it's mikre kodesh. They're holy. The covenant. They're holy. They're holy days. These are the moadim, right? These are what we call holidays, right? So the commentaries just want to point out that it's very interesting. I said tikru osam, that you call, right? Tikru osam, that you call, right? That you are, right? That's our article. It's not, I said tikru si, that I'm calling, right? Why is Hashem saying that we're calling? Well, Hashem's the one that made the holidays, right? What do we mean that we're calling the holidays? What are we designating the holidays? What does that mean exactly? It should be Hashem is designating the holidays. Right? I mean, Hashem is the one that gives us the mitzvahs. He's the one that gives us the holidays. So what does it mean that tikru osam, that you are calling or you're designating the holidays? So there's a lot going on over here, and the sort of the technical answer to this question is because we know that we make Rosh Chodesh, right? We say Rosh Chodesh. The times in the Beis Hamikdash, the times when the Great Basin, those two witnesses that would come to say, we saw the moon, right? And then Basin would say, Mechudash, it's the new moon, new month, right? And then they'll send messengers out everywhere, right? Originally, they had these fires that they would light, and it would go all the way out. It would be the quickest, it would be sort of even quicker than the internet. I don't know, quicker than the internet, but it was quick. Right, because they knew around when it was, so everybody stand on the mountaintop, and within minutes or hours, even all the people all the way out in the Gola. Don't forget, they didn't have people like here in America, right? But they people out in where we would call now Saudi Arabia, probably close even to Iran area, right? All the way out there, they would from one mountain up, and it would get to know. And later, when that process was not able to be done, the Tzaddukim, they started lighting their own fires. They started confusing, so they sent messengers out, and that's how the concept of 2-day Yom Tov came about, because the messengers weren't able to get to the people outside of the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael in time, because it took more than 15 days to get there, right? So they knew approximately when it was, and that's where the 2-day Yom Tov came. So they would keep 2-day Yom Tov, right? And when they got the message, right, they knew when it was, but they kept 2-day Yom Tov because they weren't sure exactly when it was. And mathematically, again, we know what it could be, either this day or that day, right? So that's where the concept of 2-day Yom Tov. So the technical answer is the tikru osam, that you call, because when Rosh Chodesh is, so you're just saying when Pesach is, right? You're saying when Sukkot is. You're saying when Shavuos is. You're saying when even Rosh Hashanah is, right? Because that's the technical answer. On a deeper level, the commentaries explain that what it's referring to over here, tikra osam moadam, right? As a tikra osam mikra kodesh, that you will call them or designate them as a holy mikra, as a holy covenant, a holy connection, whatever. Mikra kodesh, a holy calling, is Elahim moadam. These are the moadim. It's up to us. The day itself is a holy day. Pesach is Pesach. Shavuos is coming out. Shavuos is Shavuos. It's a holy day. It's a day we receive the Torah. But how do we make it something special? We have to go ahead and make that special, right? It's tikra osam. It's your job to make this a special day, because it could just be another day of the week. It could just be another day of, whatever. Right? So we have cheesecake and great. We have ice cream and cheesecake. So, July 4th, we have a barbecue, and, Thanksgiving, we have a turkey, right? And on Shavuos, we have cheesecake and ice cream. And on Hanukkah, we have latkes and, sukkaniyot, right? It could just be another day where it's culturally a day, right? How do we make it a holy day? We make that day a holy day for ourselves. We have to go ahead and tikra some. We have to create a mikra kodesh, a holy day, and that's what the commentaries explain. That's why it says right afterwards. It speaks about Shabbos. Oh, commentaries all ask. It says either the holidays, and what's the next verse? Shabbos, Shabbos, and mikra kodesh. The next verse. These are the holidays, and then it speaks about Shabbos. Shabbos is not a holiday. Shabbos is Shabbos, and we spoke about before. Shabbos happens without us, right? Shabbos happens. It doesn't make a difference if we designate it Shabbos or not. We don't designate the days of the week. Every 7 days is Shabbos, right? The holidays, again, as we just explained, we have to designate it, right, with Rosh Chodesh, right? So why does it speak about Shabbos right after it speaks about? It says the holidays. So there's a lot of different answers, but based off what we're saying, that's what the Torah wants us to say, that even Shabbos, which is Mikra Kodesh, so Shabbos itself, of course, is a holy Shabbos, right? And you can't do any malacha, right? Shabbos b'chomas is Shabbos in all your things. But this idea that we're saying Mikra Kodesh, it's a tikra sum that you're calling, it's up to you to make this a spiritual day, also for Shabbos. Right? How Shabbos? Of course, Shabbos is holy in and itself, and Yom Tov is holy in and itself. Rosh Chodesh or Yom Kippur, right? Shavuos, it's a holy day. But for us to feel that holiness, we have to make that holiness. We have to start showing that respect for it. We have to stop using our phones, and we have to stop, wherever level we're holding. We have to make sure we light candles, and we have to make sure that we dress properly. And I had someone a little while ago asked me, right? Said, "Oh, is this like learning about that on Shabbos? The Shabbos here have to dress a little nicer. Is that only when we go to shul, or also like around the house, or could I wear like shorts and a t-shirt around the house?" And I said, really, again, where the person's holding, I sort of said, I'm not going to make a big deal out of this right now. Rather you not turn on your lights and not drive your car, right? But now that you're asking this, right? Yes, you're supposed to dress more respectfully on Shabbos. The whole Shabbos you're supposed to. Yeah, of course, when you go to sleep, you put on your pajamas, right? And in the evening you could dress down, but during the day and whatever it is, it's still Shabbos. You should be dressed more respectfully. Right? You should be acting in a more respectful way because you have to show that respect for Shabbos. Because Shabbos is a special day, and Yom Tov also, it's a special day. It's not a day just we have a day off, or let's take a leisure walk in our shorts and a sweat, whatever, polo shirt, whatever. No, of course, take a nice walk. It's next Shabbos, but you have to be dressed properly. You have to be respectful for Shabbos, and it's not only the dress; it's everything. There's something called the kavod Shabbos. We do things for the honor of Shabbos, right? And then also for Yom Tov. So we have to go ahead and make the Shabbos and the Yom Tov holy. It's up to us to do that, right? To make it holy for ourselves. Well, I'm not being inspired, Rabbi, right? Heard that many times. You're not being inspired because you just want everything just to happen for you. Right? You're not putting really any effort or time to try to make it spiritual. You're not doing anything for that. Right? And that's what it's saying over here. So tikro some mikro kodesh, that you're calling them mikro kodesh, that you have to go ahead and you have to make a mikro kodesh. Right? Of course, in essence, it is kodesh, it is holy, but for you to feel it and to experience it and to grow from it, you have to make sure that you do that. So that's one lesson that we can learn from here, that I think is extremely important to try to, again, each one of us are on our own level, and it's always taking something. It's not all or nothing. It's taking something from where we're holding and taking to that next step. And we all know where we're holding, right? And of course, it's always good to have someone that you could speak to and say, okay, this is where I'm doing. What's the next thing that I could do? Don't just randomly take something on, right? What makes sense? I'd like this person called me and spoke to me about this, right? It's important to have someone that you have a life coach, you have a business coach. What's the next thing you could do? Is you have a spiritual coach. We have to have that. We have to have a spiritual coach too, of really, where am I holding? What am I doing? A reckoning, and then take that next step. Okay, where really am I holding? What's that next step that we could take? Okay, let's then let's go through the holidays, right? It starts off with Pesach, which is the first holiday. Okay, and now finally, right? If you go to verse 10, right, to verse 10 till really almost verse 23, it starts speaking about what we would call the holiday of Shavuos, right? But not doesn't say the word Shavuos in there. It's important to know it doesn't say Shavuos in there, right? Shavuos is called Chag HaKatzer, right? The holiday of the harvest, the cutting, right? The cutting. But it doesn't say the word Shavuos is not here anywhere. You're not going to find it, right? And the Torah tells us like this: "Da'ar b'nei Yisrael, speak to the Jewish people, Amar Alehem, tell them, Kisavo la'aretz, when you come to the land, right, that I gave you, you should cut, right? And when it's harvest, you should bring the Omer. You should bring the carbon Omer. So the carbon Omer you should bring to the Kohen, right? And then go through the process of the carbon of the Omer. Then it speaks about the lechem, the caramel. It speaks about the different things that come along with that, right? And that's the carbon Omer. That's the carbon Omer, right? So carbon Omer is actually brought, right? The carbon Omer is actually brought right after Shavuos, right? That's when the carbon Omer is brought, right? What's it called again? Before we're able to eat the new crop. So if you might have heard that some people are, sometimes you guys, Yashan, right? Yashan or Chadas, right? Yashan means old and Chadas means new. Doesn't mean to say that bread is old, right? It could be new bread, right? Or new cookie. But Yashan means to say that it's from the old stock. It's from the previous year. Right, so there's in the times of the Beis Hamikdash for sure, and that's where we're in Chutzarts. Does it apply? Not apply. Some people are stringent on it, even outside of Eretz Yisrael, right? Some people stringent on it. Some people say even in Eretz Yisrael it doesn't apply now that we know the Beis Hamikdash. And I'm not getting into all the technical details of the halacha, right? But on the second day of Pesach, this carbon Omer was brought, and once the carbon Omer was brought, that you're allowed to use all the old flat, all the wheat and grain that was processed from the year before, right? So that's why usually it actually used to not be a problem in the United States and Canada and North America. It used to not be a problem up until somewhere in the 2000s, right? Really was not a problem because it was such a there were storehouses of grains. There was so much of it, so they would never use the stuff that were cut. And then they started shipping out to all these other countries, right? So now it actually could be a problem. So usually somewhere around Hanukkah time, it depends on the year, right? Until Pesach, right? It's a lot of times it's not anymore from the grain from the previous year, or sometimes a little earlier. It's now new grain that was cut after Pesach. Right? And that's the concept of the carbon Omer. That's the carbon Omer. I don't want to get too much into it. It's a good topic to talk about. I mean, that's the carbon Omer, and that allows us to start using the old. Now it's called old flour. The old flour, right, or the old wheat to the flour. That's we're allowed to use. So that's the carbon Omer, and then. Right? Then the next verse 15, you should start counting for you from after the Shabbos, which refers to the second day of Pesach. Why is the second day of Pesach called Shabbos? Good question. Write it down. Look it up. Text me or WhatsApp me an answer, right? We're not going into that right now, right? From the day that you bring the Omer, right? Because again, we said we bring the Omer the second day. So Machras Shabbos, from the second day of Pesach, the day that you bring the Omer, right? Sheva Shabbos is to me 7 weeks, 7 Shabbos, 7 Shabbos, which is 7 weeks. Right? Tamimos completely Tiviana. Ad Machras Shabbos Shvi Tishbru Chamishim Yom, until after the seventh week, you should count 50 days, right? And then we create the Mincha Chadash Hashem. Then you bring a new Mincha Hashem, and that's the holiday of Shavuos. And then it goes into the Karbanos that you bring on Shavuos, right? The Karasem Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, right? And then verse 21, right? It says v'karatzem, and you should call it hayom hazeh mikra kodesh. That day should become holy, right? Lachem kol malach avodah lo sasu. You should not do any work on that day. And all you shirtchem is ksir artzachem lo sechal pasadcha, and then it speaks you should not plant your. You shouldn't do any of the any agricultural work. Right? And yes, all right. So this is where we know this is the holiday of Shavuos. Right? This should be holy, right? And and that's what we know from the Torah. Really, we know Shavuos is called Chag Katzir, right? In a different place, it's called the Chag Katzir. Over here, it just speaks about the harvest and the Korban Omer. It says you should count 7 days completely, and then the next day, which is the 50th day, you bring another korban, and we know that as the holiday of Shavuos. So we're going to talk. We have about 8 minutes left, so we'll talk about this for the rest of the class. There's a lot of different questions that need to be asked, and we're not going to get through all of them today. And we'll see how it goes until the holiday of Shavuos. We'll see regarding what we're able to accomplish, and if not, then we'll talk about that Shavuos night or another maybe another time. But a few questions that needs to be asked is number one, why the holiday of Shavuos doesn't the Torah tell us the day? The holiday of Pesach, right? It says on the first month and the 14th day, and then if you go to the next day, it says on the 7th month, the first day, and then it says on the 10th day, right? And then it says the 15th of the 7th day is the holiday of Shavuos. Sukkot. And all the holidays, it tells us the dates of the holiday, right? Why Shavuos doesn't the Torah tell us that on the 6th of Sivan is Shavuos, right? Why does it tell us that it's 49 days from the Omer, and the 50th day you should make it a holy day? What's the whole idea of counting? Why doesn't it tell us the day of Shavuos? Why not? Why? Second of all, right? What is the connection? And this is an important question. Right? Probably won't have time to speak about this today. Maybe we'll see. Try to answer it. Why do we call it Sfiras Omer, the counting of the Omer? Right. So why do we call it Sfiras Omer, the counting of the Omer? Because the counting starts with the Korban Omer. The Torah tells us you start counting the day that you bring the Omer. We're not counting, we don't bring Omer more than the first day. And the Korban Omer that was brought up the first day, right, of the counting, the second day of Pesach, right, the Korban Omer is brought, right, that has to do with allowing the new grain to be used, right, the old grain to be used, right, that it's not new anymore, anything that was before that to be allowed that to be used, right, so it allows everything, it allows it to be used. Right? What does that have to do with the counting to Shavuos? All right, okay, so the Torah tells us for whatever reason wants us to count 49 days, and the 50th day is Shavuos as we know it's Shavuos, right? All right, but why do we call it Sfiras? The Torah doesn't say Sfiras Omer, right? The Torah just says the day that you bring the korban, right? Why do we call it Sfiras Omer? What's the connection? Why are we calling this counting the Omer? It should be called Sfiras Shavuos, right? The counting to Shavuos, or the Sfira of Katzir, or the Sfira of Midos, or the Sfira of getting better. I don't know. Why is it called Sfiras Omer? Why is it called the counting of the Omer, right? It's the only connection to the Omer is because we start counting the same day that brought the Korban Omer. What's the connection to that? And the other question that we have to ask, and I don't know if we'll have time today, right? But the other question, and as my Rosh Hashiva always said, even if we ask the question and we don't have the answer, there's something to learn with that too, because the questions are the key to wisdom. It gives us an opportunity to look deeper into the Torah. It allows our brain to start thinking deeper into the Torah, and it's good for us to reflect on it, to think about it. Right, many times he left us off always with the shir, right, with a question, and he said, "Okay, maybe we'll talk about it next time or not, but I'd like to hear some of your thoughts, over the next few days." Right, many times he would do that. But what the next question is, so we're counting for whatever reason. The Torah, let's just give an answer, right? The Torah tells us to count. You know why the Torah tells us to count is because the Torah is telling us that there's a connection between Pesach and Shavuos. And there's a unique connection between Pesach and Shavuos more than Sukkot to Pesach or Shavuos to Sukkot. Right? For whatever reason, we'll have to figure what that is, but there's a deeper connection. Right? So the Torah tells us to count from one to the other, because in anticipation for Shavuos, we want Shavuos is the day we receive the Torah. Right? Shavuos is when we literally became the sort of the, it's called the wedding. Right? The Pesach sort of is the engagement, and Shavuos is called the wedding. Right? Between the Jewish people and Hashem was sort of the climax of us becoming the Jewish people, right? Okay, so in anticipation. So when you count something, like you're going on a trip, or you're going to a wedding, or you're going whatever it is, right? Or if it's like a president that's almost done his term in the shul, right? Right? Whatever it is, right? How do you usually count? All right, you count downwards. He said, I have 10 days left, right? I have 15 days left. I have 3 days left, right? You count downwards. Why over here? How do we count Shvius Omer? We count upwards. Today is day 1 of the Omer. Today is day 2. Today is day 15. Today is day 30, right? We count upwards. Well, we don't count downwards. Right? So if we're counting in anticipation, why don't we count downwards? Today's day 49. Today's 48, 47, 46. Why are we counting upwards? So there's some other questions, but those are 3 key questions that we have to ask ourselves. Number 1, just to repeat. Number 1 is why is it called Shvius Omer? Right? The whole Omer, as we said, was Torah just tells us to count from when the day that you brought the Omer. It's just sort of giving us a time frame, right? But what's the connection to the Omer to the counting? Why are we calling it Shvius Omer? Question number 2 was really what's the whole counting all about? Well, why does the Torah just tell us a date? Right? Why does the Torah tell us that the Shavuos is just like the third month, right? The third month on the 6th day or the 7th day, right? Well, why does the Torah not tell us a date like it says on the other holidays? Why do we only know Shavuos by counting? And so we say, hey, there's some kind of connection. So why are we counting upwards? Why don't we count downwards? That was the other question that we asked. So I'm going to answer the last question that we asked first. All right, Boris, don't worry about it. We have 2 more minutes. All right, but I'll answer the last question because we'll be able to answer that quicker. Hopefully next week we'll touch upon the other question. Why do we count upwards and not downwards, right? And really also will answer the second question. What's the idea of the connection? What's this deeper connection with Pesach and Shavuos? And the commentaries explain is because, as we just said, Pesach and Shavuos are really 2 sides of a coin. The 2 sides of a coin. Pesach is the day that we became free physically, right? We became physically free. And that gave us the opportunity to start making our own decisions. But freedom, we spoke about this once when Rabbi David wasn't here, I took over his class, right? Freedom is really the ability to make choices. Freedom is not just to do whatever the heck you want. And freedom is the ability to have the knowledge to be able to make choices and to choose which way you want to go, right? So when did we get that knowledge? When Hashem gave us the Torah. So our spiritual freedom, our ability to actually make choices, right, to choose between right and wrong, and not just to be governed by the society that we live in, and not just to be governed by what we might think is right and wrong, is the Torah that Hashem gave us, and we have the choice to either follow the Torah or not to follow the Torah. And that's what it says, the greatest freedom that one has is someone that learns Torah, because when you learn Torah, right, even though you might learn about more restrictions, about more things that you have to do, but you're actually getting the freedom of being able to make a choice now on your own will, right? You could choose. If you choose not to, okay, so the consequences, take it up with God, right? But you have a choice to choose, but before that, you didn't know. You didn't know about Shabbat. You didn't know about kosher. You didn't know about the nuances, even if you know about Shabbat, you know the nuances of what you're allowed to do, or what you're not allowed to do. You didn't know what different levels of kosher. You didn't know about other mitzvahs, or you have to give 10% of your child. Whatever it is, you know about the things, so you can't make the choice to do it or not to do it. Right? So it's really 2 sides of a coin, and that's what it means, that it's the engagement and the marriage. So the Torah is telling us, no, we have to connect the 2. 7 weeks, 7 days, right? The days in between are sort of like the Chol HaMoed, and between the first days and the last day of Yom Tov, that's really the holiday of Shavuos. And that's so it says the commentaries, and maybe we'll expand on this a little more later, another time. It says the commentaries, that's the idea of counting upwards, because we're counting upwards. When you count downwards, you're saying that these days are days that are in my way, right? I have 5 days left. These are in the way. But when we count upwards, we say, no, today's a day that I could utilize to grow, to be worthy to be able to receive the Torah. Today matters. Today's a day that matters. Day 1, day 2, day 3. Today, I can make a difference today. I could do something that matters today for me to be able to become a vessel that's worthy of receiving the Torah. And that's, if you look at the Sphira, it says that it's Hod and the different midot, right? Because every day there's something to work on. Every day there's something to grow, and that's what the Jewish people in the desert also, they went from the 49th level of impurity to the 49th level of purity, because every day they grew, every day they did something, right, to be able to be worthy, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. Also, we have to every day we have to utilize that day. It's not a day that's in the way to get to Shavuos. It's actually the way to get to Shavuos. And therefore, we count day 1, day 2, day 3 to be able to have that freedom. Hopefully, another time we'll try to expand more on both of these ideas and we'll talk about the other one. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.